how are SpaceX's operations in South Texas impacting the relationship between the United States and Mexico? This puts SpaceX directly at the center of a complex cross-border issue between the US and Mexico. And also, why is the FAA so worried about the Starship? Now, SpaceX's rocket facility, Starbase in South Texas, which is located about a mile from Boca Chica Beach, is about 30 miles from Brownsville, Texas. It's under international spotlights due to concerns about the environmental impact that it causes. Now, the International Boundary and Water Commission, the IBWC, responsible for managing water and border treaties between the US and Mexico, has a little concern going on. It's about the environmental consequences of SpaceX's activities, and they're calling for stronger collaboration with Mexican authorities as the company prepares for its next Starship launch, IFT-5. Now, the IBWC's involvement was triggered by SpaceX's request for a permit to discharge wastewater into the Rio Grande tidal marshes. The commission responded by urging the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, the TCEQ, to improve coordination with Mexico. Now, alongside U.S. agencies like the Fish and Wildlife Service and also the National Marine Fisheries Service. Now, there are growing concerns from both sides of the border about the potential environmental impacts of SpaceX's operations at Starbase. Now, tensions have also escalated recently as regulators have intensified their scrutiny of SpaceX's South Texas site. On Monday, the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, postponed the public meetings scheduled to discuss SpaceX's proposal to conduct up to 25 launches and landings of its Starship and also the booster each year. Now, this is likely linked to ongoing investigations by the TCEQ and the Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA, which have identified violations of clean water laws by SpaceX. Now, SpaceX's regulatory troubles deepened when the TCEQ sanctioned the company operating its deluge system, which is designed to spray over 100,000 gallons of fresh water during Starship launches. And they said they had without proper permits. Now, these are huge deals for SpaceX, and they try to adhere to environmental regulations as they continue to expand their operations down at Starbase. Now, at the same time, SpaceX is embroiled in a federal lawsuit concerning the FAA's approval of its Starship operations, particularly regarding the impact on beach access in the surrounding area. Now, the battle highlights the broader implications of operating a large-scale rocket facility near environmentally sensitive regions, and also they have to make sure that they don't hurt any birds, any sea animals, any creatures in that region, or any of the plant life. And in a later letter dated August 2nd, the chief of IBWC's Environmental Management Division said that they need more thorough cross-border collaboration. They requested that the TCEQ allow Mexican authorities adequate time to review and provide feedback on SpaceX's proposed wastewater discharge, which could affect the water quality of the Rio Grande tidal area. Now, this is a transboundary nature of the environmental concerns that are going on right now. But real quick, before we get more into this, just take a second, please, and like this video and subscribe. Takes a second. Thank you so much. Can help it out. Now let's get back to the show. And the IBWC's spokesperson, Frank Fisher, indicated that while the U.S. section of the commission has forwarded SpaceX's permit request to the Mexican section, it remains uncertain whether Mexican authorities have received or will respond to this notice. He pointed out that the Mexican section would require at least about 2 weeks to review the proposal, adding another layer of complexity to SpaceX's efforts to secure the necessary permits for its upcoming IFT-5 launch. Now, the IBWC concerns extend beyond water quality to include the potential impact on designated critical habitats, such as those with the piping plover, which is a bird species that relies on these coastal areas. The commission urged the TCEQ to coordinate with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service before issuing any new permits. And this is important because they want to protect the vulnerable species from the potential environmental impact of SpaceX's operations. Now, I am an environmentalist myself. I love the environment. But in addition to concerns about the piping plover, the IBWC also highlighted the potential effects on marine life including loggerhead and green sea turtles in the Gulf of Mexico. The commission requested that the TCEQ collaborate with the National Marine Fisheries Service to evaluate these risks before moving forward with any permit approvals. And these considerations are crucial as SpaceX continues its work near ecologically sensitive areas. Now, like I was saying before, I love the environment. I love to be out in nature, but I also love to watch rocket launches. I'm a huge proponent of what SpaceX is doing. They're building the biggest and most powerful rocket that's ever been flown. And I'm a huge fan of that. I just wish that they would figure out a way to marry technology in the environment so we can please continue on with these launches. I want IFT-5, IFT-6, IFT-7, etc. to be successes. So by no means is this a hit piece against SpaceX. This is a news piece that I'm just telling you about what's going on with the environment down at SpaceX Starbase and the players in Mexico and the United States that are they're not against SpaceX. They're working with SpaceX to get this stuff resolved. So I don't know if you're an environmentalist or if you just want rockets to fly. If you don't care, let me know down in the comments below. But let's get back to the news. And so the IBWC's environmental concerns are backed by specific data. The Rio Grande tidal segment in question is already listed in the Texas Integrated Report on Surface Water Quality as having problems with bacteria, chlorophylla, low dissolved oxygen, and high nitrate levels. And given these existing issues, the possibility of additional pollutants from SpaceX's wastewater, even though it's potable water, it raises significant concerns among regulators and also some environmentalists down near SpaceX too. Now, the commission also sought detailed information on SpaceX's plans to treat the water used in its deluge system in the area surrounding the launch pad before the system is activated for the next time. So proper pre-treatment methods are essential for minimizing the environmental impact of the large volumes of water utilized during launches. Now, these details will be crucial in determining whether SpaceX can continue launching from Starbase. They have to comply with environmental standards. Now, SpaceX's environmental challenges aren't limited to water quality, though. So after the Coastal Bend Bays and Estuaries program reported that on June 6th of this year, Starship launch destroyed at least 9 shorebird nests, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service initiated an investigation into possible violation of the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. This is an international law which involves Mexico, Canada, Japan, Russia, and it prohibits harming migratory birds without proper authorization from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. The Migratory Bird Treaty Act imposes substantial penalties for violations. Misdemeanor offenses can lead to fines up to $5,000 and 6 months in prison for individuals or $10,000 for organizations. But I don't think organizations go to prison for this. They just get a fine. So SpaceX could be okay doing this. They could be fine with the fine. Now, felony violations carry even harsher penalties, though, including fines up to $250,000 and 2 years in prison for individuals, while organizations face fines of up to $100,000. These are legal risks that SpaceX is probably okay with taking because they have the money to do it, but it's not a good thing. And under the Biden administration, the regulatory landscape has become more stringent. Trump had previously rolled back protections under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act to exempt incidental bird deaths caused by industrial activities. However, the Biden administration has reinstated these protections, meaning that SpaceX could now face legal consequences for incidental harm to birds during its launches, adding another layer of complexity to this whole thing. And despite these challenges, SpaceX is continuing preparations for its next Starship test flight, known as Integrated Flight Test 5. And while the company has secured approval from the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, it still awaits the more crucial approval from the FAA. The timing of this approval will be critical in determining when SpaceX can proceed with its next launch. And the FAA's approval is a probably the next biggest hurdle for SpaceX for the IFT launch. Although the FCC's approval is an important step, the FAA holds the ultimate authority to permit the launch. Now, the test flights of IFT-4 and IFT-3 show steady progress, and they're very successful. IFT-4 was the most successful so far. However, the company still faces significant regulatory challenges before it can continue with its planned launch schedule. SpaceX's previous test flights have yielded mixed reviews. From the first two flights, IFT-1 and IFT-2, they were both considered kind of failures, but also successes. They provided valuable data that helped improve the company's performance in IFT-3 and IFT-4. Now, IFT-3 was deemed a success, and the fourth flight, IFT-4, showed further progress. However, each launch requires careful analysis and also regulatory approval to ensure that SpaceX remains in compliance with all relevant laws and regulations. Now, moving forward, SpaceX will continue working towards launch of IFT-5. They're currently testing the catch arms and other hardware for the upcoming first landing of a Starship booster at Starbase. Now, SpaceX is aiming to achieve something that few companies have ever done. No one's ever done this, landing the booster portion of its Starship rocket back on land after the launch. For its upcoming mission, the rocket will launch from the Texas coast of Starbase, ascend over the Gulf of Mexico, and then after the booster separates, there's a burn to get back, and the upper stage keeps going, it'll attempt a return to land at Starbase. This maneuver is not just about testing the booster, though. It's also about validating SpaceX's advancements for their future launches. The RTL concept is challenging because it requires precise control over the booster's descent. And after the initial separation of the booster and the upper stage, the booster must guide itself back through the atmosphere, using a combination of its grid fins and engine burns to slow it down and adjust its trajectory. And unlike previous tests where boosters landed on the Gulf of Mexico and in the ocean, this test will aim to bring the booster back to solid ground, specifically at Starbase, at the launch pad. And as part of the preparations for the mission, SpaceX has been making huge updates to the infrastructure of Starbase. The launch tower, which is the hugest tower, over 400 feet tall, which is used for launch and recovery, is being outfitted with upgraded catch arms. These arms are designed to grab the returning booster and secure it after it lands. It's vital for the booster's recovery. It doesn't squish the booster. It catches the booster on either side. You can see it right there. But it will catch it on either side and lower it gently down to the ground. It's an immense size too. It's huge, and the weight is a lot too. So the catch arms are also an engineering marvel. They must be strong enough to hold the booster, which is about 70 meters tall, at about 200 metric tons. Not only that, though, they need to function with split-second precision to prevent damage during the booster's landing. SpaceX has been testing and fine-tuning these systems in the lead-up to the IFT-5 launch. The FAA's involvement in this mission is a significant factor, too. The Federal Aviation Administration is responsible for ensuring the SpaceX's launch and landing operations are safe, not just for the company, but for the surrounding communities and the environment. SpaceX has to meet a number of regulatory requirements before the FAA grants approval for any test, especially one as complex as landing a rocket booster back at the tower. Safety is a major concern for the FAA, particularly because of the risks involved in bringing such a massive booster back to land. It's never been done. And if something were to go wrong during the descent or the landing, there could be serious consequences, not just for SpaceX, but also for anybody that's nearby. Brownsville is pretty far away, but I mean, it depends on what happens during the reentry, the flight back to the pad. I don't think they're at any risk at Brownsville, but the question remains, how will they be able to control this? Or how well will they be able to control this? So this is why the FAA's review process is thorough and takes months to complete usually. And this is a huge one, so it could take more months than we're used to complete the thorough process of being okay with SpaceX landing a booster. Now, SpaceX, on the other hand, is no stranger to these regulatory challenges. They've been working with the FAA for years with the Falcon 9 launches, Falcon 1, and also these other Starship launches. Still, though, each new mission brings a fresh set of safety concerns, especially as SpaceX continues to push it with their Starship. Now, one of the FAA's primary considerations in this case is the landing site at Starbase. So unlike ocean landings or the Gulf of Mexico landings, where there's plenty of room for error, landing on land involves much more precise navigation. SpaceX needs to ensure that the booster will land exactly where it's supposed to the centimeter, actually. And that's, of course, they don't want to veer off course. The company has been refining their landing algorithms and testing the booster's navigation systems in preparation for this moment. Now, the Gulf of Mexico is a huge player in this game. By launching over the Gulf, SpaceX minimizes the risks to populated areas in case of a failure during ascent or booster separation. This allows the company to focus on the more challenging part of the mission, bringing the booster back to land safely at Starbase. SpaceX's ultimate goal with these tests is to make the entire Starship system fully reusable. And while the company has had success landing Falcon 9 boosters on drone ships and even on land, the Starship booster is much larger and more powerful, making these landings way more difficult. And a successful return to land at Starbase would mark a huge milestone for SpaceX's efforts to reduce the cost of space travel. And one of the reasons SpaceX is so focused on reusability is that it has the potential to significantly lower the cost of launching rockets. The company's long-term goal is to use Starship for missions to the moon, to Mars, and to the outer solar system. And reusability is key to making these missions economically viable. Each booster that can be recovered and reused represents millions of dollars saved. Over time, billions. And the upcoming IFT-5 mission will be an important test, not just for the booster landing, but also for the overall performance of the Starship system, including the ground systems. And SpaceX has been gradually improving Starship over time in the capabilities through a series of test flights, with each one building on the successes and also the failures of the last tests. This mission will put many of these advancements to the test. And in particular, SpaceX will be watching closely to see how well the booster's landing systems perform. This includes the grid fins, which help steer the booster during its descent, and the engines, which must fire at just the right moments to slow the booster down enough for a safe landing. And if everything goes according to plan, the booster will touch down at Starbase without the need of a drone ship or landing legs. And preparing Starbase for this test has been a massive undertaking. In addition to the catch arms and the other hardware upgrades, SpaceX has been conducting dry runs and simulations that ensure that everything will go smoothly on launch day. These preparations are a huge deal because once the rocket is in the air, there's no room for error. Once it's gone, it's gone. A million things could go wrong. And the success of this mission could have a major impact on SpaceX. If SpaceX can demonstrate that it can reliably land the Starship booster back on land, it'll pave the way for more frequent launches and quicker turnaround times between missions. It's important because SpaceX wants to launch missions for NASA and other customers in the future, including for the Artemis program. They need to launch numerous refueling tankers, more than likely from Starbase. So the FAA will continue to monitor SpaceX's progress throughout the lead up to IFT-5, even after the launch and also the landing attempt, and the agency will be closely reviewing the data from the test to ensure that everything was done safely. The data will also help inform future decisions about Starship launches and landings, and also SpaceX's drive for reusability doesn't stop at the booster, though. They also plan to recover the upper stage sometime. Though that part of the system is still in development and they don't plan on it anytime soon, eventually SpaceX wants to create a fully reusable spacecraft that can be used for a variety of missions, from delivering satellites into orbit to taking humans to other planets. So let me know what you think about SpaceX attempting a return to land move for IFT-5 in the comments down below. And please take a second and hit the like and the subscribe button. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to share it on social media with anyone you think would find it interesting. Thanks for watching. Please take care of yourselves and each other, and I'll see you next time.